There's Mridanga.
Yes.
Thanks, Anirudh. There's Mridanga.
Yes.
Someone can play Mridanga. Mridanga. This is sung by Lochan Das Thakur. Param Kuruna. Param Kuruna. Ohodoi Jana Nitai Gauraja. So 1 2 beat. Shababadada Shadashidomani Kebala Ananda Khanda. Kebala Ananda Khanda. Bhaja Bhaja Bhai Chaitanya Nidai Sudre Ramesha Shakore. Ishaya Chariya Shiroshi Majiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari. Shune Jana Guna Ganya. Goswami Prabhupada ki, Iskon Pratishtatacharya Prabhupada ki, Shamaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Ananta Kori Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Nishtanath Brahma. Let's begin. We'll go around the room and you can tell us something you learnt from chapters 7 to 9, Canto 1, something you learnt. Your name?
Dev Kishore.
Dev Kishore.
Dev Kishore.
Dev Kishore.
Nice to meet you. Probably a wonderful performance, to say the least. In terms of what I've learned from the previous chapters that we've been through, I think one thing that stood out to me was the depth of understanding we could gain from Queen Kunti's praise, in the sense that I know Prabhupada says that he normally refers to them as teachings.
Teachings of Queen Kunti, yes.
And for us to gain a sense of direction and to see how difficult situations can bring us closer to Krishna is enlightening, and it kind of just sheds a positive light and shows us how, like, through philosophical education we can then reinterpret reality in a way which will then allow us to facilitate us to then grow in bhakti, as opposed to feeling like we're a victim of the situation.
Dev Kishan, some valuable learning for you from praise of Queen Kunti.
Thank you.
Yeah. Prabhu.
Regarding past chapter 7, 8, 9.
Your name, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Your name?
My name is Anand Dulal Das from Malaysia.
Anandullah, Prabhu.
Yes. Chapter 7, the punishment of Dorona's son of Aswatthama. It is considered as a Brahmana. We are even Brahmana's son also we consider as a Brahmana. Is a teacher. So they have to cannot be punished. The Brahmana.
Interesting.
The cannot be punished by the Brahmana.
Yes,
because
it's an interesting section of the Bhagavatam, Nandadulal.
Yeah.
Prabhu?
Myself, Jai Jagdish Das. Jai Jagdish Das.
Jai Jagdish. Something you learned from chapter 7 to 9, Jai Jagdish.
In teachings of Queen Kunti, when Queen Kunti addressed Krishna as Akinchana Gochara, really inspired that. Unless a devotee of anybody who get exhausted from this material life, we cannot approach Krishna.
Jai Jagdish, yes.
Rasmai Nityananda.
Rajman. Yeah.
Rasmai Nityananda.
Rashmai Nityananda Das Brahmachari.
Prabhu, when Aswathama released second time Brahmastra, so that time it is mentioned that Arjuna and Pandavas were not having time, even they were not realized, but Krishna protected him. So like how much 10% they were totally surrendered, so Krishna personally took them charge of all these things. So
Rashmai Nityananda, we have a lot of interaction between Krishna and the Pandavas in Canto 1.
Hare Krishna. It's Revati Nandan Das. And if I have to take something in particular, then I would say that Bhishma's arrows were like soft flowers at Krishna's body, and his wounds were like decoration ornaments.
Rasha Shastra, Bhagavatam, Tapo Vishnu Chakri Tapo. Thank you. Your name again?
Revati Nandan.
Revati Nandan.
Yes.
Thank you.
my name is Shumon, and well, for me the most interesting one was Bhishma Stuti, where especially this part that how Krishna is utilizing the help of his pure devotees, Pandavas, giving them all these torments, but teaching the whole world through lessons through them.
That's fascinating. Mataji.
My name is Sundari Gopi from New Vrindavan Temple. What I learned was, for me, it's like how to have my life around Krishna so that like Vishwadev, he can fully focus on Krishna at the time of death. So it's a big learning, it's a long lifetime of work.
Clear path for you in life, Sundari Gopi. Yes. Where are you from?
New Vrindavan.
New Vrindavan.
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
Welcome. Good. Glad to hear so much valuable learning for you in the previous chapters. In this section, we're going to be covering chapters 10 to 13 in the next few days. Might like to take a look at this schedule here. Might like to take a snapshot of this, see what we're covering each day. 10th chapter today, actually, chapter 10 today. We assume that you might be expecting that. So even without giving you advance notice, chapter 10 today. Look at chapter 10 today. Tomorrow, chapter 11. Next day, which will be Wednesday, look at that. Bit of chapter 12, bit of chapter 13 as well. A few verses into chapter 13 on Wednesday. The Thursday, everything Shampunno, complete. Thursday. Friday, you can consolidate. Might like to take note of that if you want to make sure that you're there up to date every day with what's going on. Verse 1, translation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 1, translation. Someone read, please.
Saunaka Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Maharaj Yudhishthir, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness.
Now, why was it that Yudhishthir was unable to enjoy the results of his victory? Sundari Gopi.
Because all of his cousins and all loved ones died. How can you enjoy? You need your loved ones close to you to share your joy.
Yeah. In the verse it mentions, Pratya Aviruddha Bhojana. He was eating less. He was disturbed. He was depressed. And that's the topic of discussion now. That's the topic that Shaunak Rishi is inquiring. How was it? How did he take over the leadership? Let's read verses 2 and 3. Translations.
Lord Shri Krishna, Sutta Goswami said, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased after reestablishing Maharaj Yudhishthira in his own kingdom and after restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. Next.
Yeah.
Then Maharaj Yudhishthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishmadev and Lord Shri Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge, because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brother.
Okay, so we're hearing now about the leadership, Maharaj Yudhishthir's leadership, his style of leadership, the description of his leadership, the conditions of his... Here's what's going on in this chapter. You can see the screen up here. Right now we're looking at Shaunak inquires from Sutta Goswami about the rule. After everything had settled down, the dust had settled with Kurukshetra, and even Bhishma departed, so he was like final, the grandsire. And Yudhishthira was not willing to take over the throne, and then even Krishna was unable to induce him, and so Bhishmadev, we saw the glories of Bhishmadev. And now Shaunak's asking, well, okay, after he got instructed by Bhishmadev and he began ruling, and how was that? How were things? So we'll look at that in a little more detail. Sutta Goswami will describe in some detail. And we'll look at that. Prabhupada's purport is quite elaborate. And then Krishna leaves, the ladies go up under the rooftops and offer prayers, Hastinapura, we'll discuss that a little bit, and Krishna's departure. Krishna accepts those prayers. Okay, now, text 3, can you find in text 3, it says the paragraph beginning, modern elected executive head of state is just like a puppet.
Yeah.
If someone like to read that, read a couple paragraphs here.
The modern elected.
While we're listening, let's listen to this, and from the example of Yudhishthira Maharaj, let's see if we can identify some essential principles of leadership based on what Prabhupada says here. You can read.
The modern elected executive head of a state is just like a puppet because he has no kingly power. Even if he is enlightened like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he cannot do anything out of his own goodwill due to his constitutional position. Therefore, there are so many states over the earth quarreling because of ideological differences or other selfish motives. But a king like Maharaj Yudhishthira had no ideology of his own. He had but to follow the instruction of the infallible Lord and the Lord's representative and the authorized agents. Bhishma. It is instructed in the Shastras that one should follow the great authority and the infallible Lord without any personal motive and manufactured ideology. Therefore, it was possible for Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule the whole world, including the seas, because the principles were infallible and universally applicable to everyone. The conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if we can follow the infallible authority. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and infallible can create a progress which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world. It is the person who rules and not the impersonal government. If the
Go on, a little more.
If the person is perfect, the government is perfect. If the person is a fool, the government is a fool's paradise. That is the law of nature. There are so many stories of imperfect kings or executive heads. Therefore, the executive head must be a trained person like Maharaj Yudhishthira. And he must have the full autocratic power to rule over the world. The conception of a world state can take shape only under the regime of a perfect king like Maharaj Yudhishthira. The world was happy in those days because there were kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule over the world.
Okay, some general principles. This is the specific example of Yudhishthira, but from that, let's identify some general principles of effective leadership relevant for us in ISKCON. Sundari Gopi.
So in this particular one, I see that one leader has to be like a servant leader, following Krishna. I mean, he should be serving and being a leader of serving Krishna.
Why don't we jot down some of these things? Someone like to write for us? Someone like to jot down this? Servant leadership.
I would like my writing.
Sundari Gopi.
Oh, go ahead, go.
Yeah, servant leadership. No need to number them. You can close the door. Yeah, servant leadership. What else? And then they had the attitude of a servant. General principles of leadership. Rashamoy, Nityananda.
No selfish motive here it is written.
No selfish motive. Sundari Gopi?
Yeah, only Krishna can please everyone. No other individual can please everybody.
Yes, that's philosophical. The question is in regard a principle about leadership now. Yes, Babu?
Could we state being obedient?
Okay, obedience. General principles of good leadership from this example.
The leader needs to be trained.
Trained, yes, training. Yeah, not just sentiment. You should be trained.
Should have full autocratic power.
Yeah, full autocratic power. Full autocratic power, yeah. That's enough points, that's fine. Let's have a look, Prabhu, yeah, take a seat. We're good, we've got plenty of points here. Awesome. We're good here. Okay, let's look at this. On the screen here, you can read this. Would someone like to read it?
The conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if we can follow the infallible authority. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and infallible can create a program which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world.
Yeah, this Keshan, your Keshan, yes? Keshan?
Dev Kishan.
Dev Keshan, yeah, they've mentioned this, it's obedient, like we got this point here, that you're creating an ideology, but rather than creating some ideology, I mean, you look at world leadership, as this one created ideology after another. It's like, they call it, the political science actually is the subject. Political science. Political science. They create ideologies and they have, But here it says that only be fulfilled by following the infallible authority. You don't have to create an ideology, you have to follow the infallible authority. That's a general principle. So only the perfect and infallible create a program, so you have to follow the Lord, simple as that. We got that. What's that change coming in? No selfish motive, servant leadership, obedient, all of those points there. Very much, in other words, the principle here is that the leadership, Krishna consciousness in our, very much required, not just good organizer, good manager, but Krishna conscious, so that they really reflect the desire of the Lord. Read on a little bit. So it's the person who rules, not the impersonal government. Wow. It's a person who rules. Some even here in Mayapur, you get they post letters on the forum, Mayapur forum. You know Mayapur forum? Mayapur forum. You know Mayapur. Yeah. Mayapur forum. Sometimes they'll let some of the management. It's signed the management. The management. And even who's the management? Who's the management? Prabhupada says here, it's the person who rules, not the impersonal government. What about this one?
So what does it mean? Does it mean that an individual should take responsibility rather than just putting it on the government?
Yeah, it's exactly what Prabhupada means. Our government style is impersonal. You can't find who's accountable. Everyone will dodge accountability. It's just the decision. It's a government decision. It's a managerial decision. No one wants to. But Prabhupada's saying that it's a person. It's the person. It should be personal, very much personal. Personal leadership. I mean, it's regal. That's regal. That's royal. The system Prabhupada is implying here is king. It's king, and the king's Krishna conscious, Raja Rishi. And the king's fully powerful and surrendered to the will of the Lord, and everyone accepts it. Everyone's inspired by the king. They're inspired by the king because of his qualities, his heroic qualities. But nowadays leaders are not like that. They're not heroic. They're not on the front line in the armed forces. Even in the British royal family, you'll see that the British royal family, there's a king a few weeks ago, King of England, you may know, there's a King of England. You're King of England. India used to be part of the Commonwealth of the British Commonwealth actually, so it would have been the King of India if it wasn't for Indian independence 50 years ago, 70 years ago, a new King of India. But she was the Queen. Queen Victoria was Queen of India. You've been to Victoria Monument in Calcutta? She never even went. Victoria Monument, Calcutta. But Prabhupada liked that. He walked there in the mornings. Said he climbed it in his youth. So Prabhupada's the king. The king. That's the person. So the king, the personality of the king, ideal society. Ideal king, ideal society. Simple. Full autocratic power, yeah, in the same way. The society, they're happy to give that full autocratic power if the person's ideal, if the king's ideal. Now, how's it relevant for ISKCON, all of this? Sundari Gopi?
Because we are not perfect beings. We do follow, an individual might take up, but we need to have a body. An individual by himself will get, the individual ideologies will come because we are in Kali Yuga. It is natural, then it becomes like absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because we are still...
George Bernard Shaw.
So...
It's true. George Bernard Shaw. No, Orson Welles. 1984.
Yeah.
Is the name of the book. Absolute power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I learned that in school.
Animal Farm.
So Prabhupada said about
Animal Farm, right?
Yeah, Animal Farm. Is it Orson Welles or George Bernard Shaw? One of those. Yeah. So yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
so Prabhupada said a body is needed for ISKCON, a GPC. So, but for individual projects, yes, we can have a leadership. But for the organization, we need to have a body.
It's interesting. Look at the successful yatras in our movement. Successful yatras, and look at their top leadership style. How would you describe it? Give examples.
Can you please rephrase your
Successful yatras. Successful yatras in our movement, and what's the leadership style like? You can raise. Maybe let's hear from some of the Shubhak Pandit Gon or Pashtidachin. Successful yatras in our movement, what's the leadership style like? Malaysia, successful yatra. Successful yatras in our movement. You can't think of successful yatras?
I don't have much experience regarding Yatra. I know only Navdeep Mandal.
Yatra means zone. When I say yatra, I don't mean parikrama. I mean successful yatra means a successful area of the world where ISKCON is preaching.
But it's a very strict adherence to the Shastric principles and following rigid sadhana bhakti. I mean, in the terms not fanatical but not uncompromising.
You think it's interesting? Others thoughts? Successful yatras?
You want an example?
Yeah, what's been your experience? What's the
So,
leadership style
yeah,
in successful
I have
yatras?
seen in ISKCON Silicon Valley, Vaisheshika Maharaj, in his leadership, he takes care of book distribution. His goal is book distribution.
Well, okay, that's what about the style? The style of leadership.
His is more like, he's very personal.
Yeah.
He takes people along with him. And it's not that he stands and he does kirtans. He takes children on the stage during Sadhu Sangha. He takes the youth. He's on the dais with the kids. So that, he trains them to become leaders.
So you would say that his personality has a big influence on the
Yes,
leadership?
very much, yes.
Other examples?
Dindarun Maharaj Woodstock Festival or something, Poland Festival.
Okay. Personality, yeah. I mean,